good on both sides. He'll kick the opener. Left foot finish at class.
Through comes Cameron. What about the front and centre? Brilliant. Zach Bailey. And that's never, ever online. Missed a lot.
Dawson was there, but it spills to Lachie Neale. He has missed. It has afflicted everyone.
Well, last week we won a game that we probably shouldn't have. This week we lost a game that we probably should have. It is swings and roundabouts. It's the Brisbane Lions Fancast thanks to Hop On Brewery Tours and Crisp Communications. I can see Pat's brow furrowing already at that. What an interesting game we had on Friday night. We knew it was going to be close, as they all are with Adelaide over the last 3 or 4 years. Even before the game, Nathan Buckley tipped the draw, and it did look like a live option with a couple of minutes to go. 20 inside 50s and 10 or 11 scoring shots for 8 behinds in the last quarter compared to Adelaide's 8 inside 50s, 5 goals zip. That seems to be the summary of the game. There was wet weather, there was dry weather, there was just about everything involved in this footy match, Pat. And we'll have a look at all the different ways you can sort of look at this game, because there's good and bad ways to look at it. I know today you've rewatched the last quarter, so you're going to go in a bit of an in-depth analysis on that.
The last 8 minutes and 52 seconds.
Fair enough. I can imagine that was a pretty frustrating watch, again, as it was on Friday night in real time.
Yeah, well, I mean, it wasn't great, was it? No. I think the game in and of itself was... I was, like, surprisingly stressed the whole game. I don't know what it was, but it's the first time this season where I've been like, come on, like, we've got to... Like, I've been... fully like riding the game. And I know that sounds a bit insane, but I think it felt like it mattered in the way that some of the other games this season kind of haven't felt that way. You've been kind of riding the crest of the premiership wave where you're like, all right, well, if we win, we win. And it made it a little bit stressful.
There's a few reasons why. I think it's a top 4 team. It's a team that is playing very good footy and regularly kicking over 100 points. It's an away game, wet weather, and Murray Davis has got just about every bit of IP on the Brisbane Lions and how to play against us that is possible after being there for the last 13 years. So for those reasons alone, we can look at the performance and think, you know what, that's pretty good. We've gone to a very hostile environment against a very good team. We shut down Isaac Rankin. You know, their key forwards had very little say on the game. Having said that, it was a pretty wet weather game, so it wasn't really designed for key forwards. Thilthorpe did a few things here and there. Dunkley got the best of Jordan Dawson across the game. It's a shame that the last quarter Dawson had some pretty key moments, including one hell of a pack mark. All in all, it was a pretty good game of footy. The intensity was hot from the get-go, and Adelaide really came out hard. You could tell they were tackling with intensity. They wanted to hurt us. Like they'd obviously built themselves up for this game as well. Because over the last 3 or 4 years when Adelaide have sort of been on the cusp, these are the games they lose. And these are the games that, you know, the media will come down on them and say, look, this is why they can't play finals. They regularly fail against the top teams, always falling short, especially in the close games they've lost. You know, I think they've only won one of their last 10 to 15 or something like that. So for them, I can understand why it's a big win and, you know, that credential win for them because they've taken a scalp. Having said that, everything says we should have won that match. Everything says we should have won that match.
My knee-jerk reaction, if I was an Adelaide fan, is I'm not sold on my team's late game, save the game mode at all. Because they did a very similar thing against Port Adelaide and got away with it, where Port Adelaide probably should have won that game against Adelaide. And, I mean, I'll get into it a little bit later, but I've heard it thrown around quite a bit in Discord, on Reddit, how that game was perceived to be very similar to the Melbourne game that we played against the Demons a few weeks ago. Could not be more different. and I'll go into reasons why. But that wasn't the case of us just hacking the ball up the line to O'Brien, as we did with Gawn. I think Melbourne put some absolutely elite pressure on the ball, and their system was so good, and I just don't think Adelaide's was good at all. They were great in the contest, and they were great in the marking contest, but we had so many avenues into goal. And we've talked over text, and the Fox guys said we just completely lost our heads on commentary, and that's essentially the story of the game. Luke Hodge put it pretty well. You sent me a clip of Luke Hodge talking about it, saying that I don't know that I entirely agree that it was a selfishness. I'm happy for our players to be trying to win the game, but
I think there was just a few too many moments in key moments where particular individuals were trying to be the one to do the thing when we haven't necessarily done that, especially in late last season. One moment that particularly stood out to me, and I talked to you about it, is Rochelle's goal start. I think it was like the second goal in the last quarter. We had the numbers. We had the out numbers. It was like a 2-on-3 or even a 2-on-1. It was Fletcher and Ainsworth, and they both there was just no communication between the two. They both wanted to take it upon themselves to clear the ball, ended up sort of stumbling over each other. Keys gets the ball, free run, Rochelle into goal, and then that was emblematic of a lot of moments. And obviously we'll have a chat about Zach Bailey, particularly his last quarter. Geez, I'm sure Dev Rob will come up as well. We've got plenty of questions to get through across the day, but just the one change for the game. Ty Gallop got handed his debut. Darcy Gardner with knee soreness, which is to be expected. He's had 5-6 games back now after coming back from the ACL. So good to get him a game. And all in all, I thought he was really impressive, Ty Gallop, especially getting thrown straight in, doing backup ruck against Riley Thilthorpe. I thought he held his own. Obviously, it wasn't a night for key forwards, but his ground level work, his pressure, he did some pretty good stuff. He had some good handballs. He showed enough to me that I think he's obviously, he's shown enough in VFL and preseason matches and stuff, but at the AFL level, in a hot game like that, he had some really, really good moments. I was really impressed with his debut.
Yeah, I absolutely was too. And I think you nailed it. Him going straight to the ruck against Thrillhouse, and then I think one of the other first things he did was like a massive tackle on Fogarty.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, so you're taking it up to these two highly touted, highly regarded big guys that I would not want to go near.
I thought his ruckcraft was actually really good.
Yeah, it was. He was able to plant his hips really well, and even like body off Thilthorpe. He did well, and he was composed. He had a lot of like grunt, ran out of legs a little bit, but that's understandable. Like, I think it's a perfectly. It's a kind of game that you wonder where he's had a few quieter games in the VFL if they've been more like this sort of a game where he's, he hasn't affected the stat sheet, but it's not for lack of doing stuff.
Yeah.
Because it didn't look like a golf where we've seen it. At times where the second ruck will go in and kind of get dominated a little bit, and you're like, okay, that's not great. So, he's a big, stable frame, and I
liked it. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, it was good. Didn't quite release. It wasn't the game to release Hipwood in the way that it could have. But I thought Hipwood's contributions were pretty good. I mean, my take on the game on the whole was I thought our first 3 quarters were brilliant. So
yeah,
and I thought someone asked, I think they missed the game in the Discord. They said, what happened? And I said, well, we were perfect for 3 quarters. We fell asleep for 12 minutes, and then we dominated the remainder of the last quarter and lost the game. So
what I will say about the first quarter is I thought Adelaide's pressure was intense. Like it was hot stuff. I was surprised to see when the pressure reading came up, ours was actually higher, because I felt like Adelaide got a lot cleaner ball in the first quarter. They were able to move the ball a little bit more smoothly. We all our disposals seemed to be under like immediate pressure, and I thought the goals that we did kick, Rayner banging one on the left and Archie just sort of got a lucky bounce that went through. Whereas Adelaide very much like our last quarter, squandered some pretty gettable shots on goal early on, and I think they started the game 0 goals 6 or something. So I thought, all in all, Adelaide were probably playing the better footy in the first quarter, like much cleaner footy anyway. And the one thing that really separated the two was their ability for contested marking across the whole night, whereas we just could not buy one, really. And there was a couple of moments in the third where Logan Morris took a couple of decent ones. And just to touch back on Hipwood, how good were his 2 spoils in the back half? Like, that's crazy. That, that just goes to show the sort of the work that you don't see from Eric Hipwood a lot. But, to get 2 goal-saving spoils, like clean, legitimate centre-half-back spoils, was really good to see.
Yeah, we did struggle with the contested mark. The first quarter was a bit of a dicey one. I don't know if you saw the free kick count at quarter time, but it was 12-6.
Well, yeah.
And we were on for like a 78 free kick game, and I was just like, cool your jets, dudes.
Yep.
We don't need that much interference. Contested marking was hard to find for us. I mean, they came through, later on in the game, but it wasn't the avenue to goal. So although it was really good for kind of creating or taking territory and building up, it wasn't super necessary. And that was kind of what happened with our 2 goals. Yeah, the lucky bounce from Archie. Rayner did really well on the left. But interestingly enough, like, I don't read too much into the whole expected score of it all, but their expected score in the first quarter was not actually very much above what they ended up with. Their shots seemed to be quite low percentage attempts. So I don't know if that's wrong or right, but compared to our stuff late in the game, holy shit. So,
oh man, I thought like that the whole game across the whole field was just one-on-one the whole game, and there was so many interesting one-on-one matchups across the whole field. And sort of last week we predicted that Froggy would go to Tex, that Payne would go to Thilthorpe, and that Harris would go to Fogarty, and that's how it ended up. I thought all those key matchups were pretty good. Answorth went to Rankin, did a fantastic job on Rankin across the whole night. Keys went to Zorko, which Keys got the chocolates there easily across the night before we sort of changed that matchup to get Fletcher on him. I thought Keys had a fantastic game for Adelaide. I think it was sort of Archie and Charlie Cameron at times were doing a job on Michael Aney, and obviously Dunkley on Dawson, and there were various matchups here and there. And
Saligo and Neil were kind of going head to head.
It was just chock full of one-on-one matchups. It was really like good to watch.
It was when they lined up. I initially saw Neil Bullen go to Zorko and was like, "Oh, that's an interesting one." But that obviously didn't eventuate. I barely noticed Alex Neil Bullen, and he's been so integral for them.
He didn't train on the Tuesday or something, because I saw reports coming out saying, "Oh, he's really sore. He didn't train with the group, and that he was potentially not going to play." So if he was obviously playing underdone, but the players that normally would have a huge effect, like Fogarty was unsighted.
Yeah, Fogarty. He did nothing except throw the ball at the end. So, on the whole, I mean, I saw a comment about my takes on Zorko. I understand. It was amazing. I tell you what, it was amazing last week that I said that Zorko was nowhere near All-Australian this year. And here we go, mid-season All-Australian. Zorko's in it. Zorko's in David King's one. Dawson was in David King's one as a forward pocket. So that probably tells you all you need to know about that. They identify, I've been saying it for years. I'm like, if I was another team, I would be identifying Zorko as a weak link in the defense. And that's happened in the last couple of games where they put someone to him. They've run him hard the other way. They've taken chances. And I think in a game like that where it is wet, it is worthwhile trying to slime one out the other side. And Keys was great, annoyingly. Zorko tried to take him the other way, like he did with
Peatling, in the GWS
Peatling.
Yeah.
It didn't quite work out the same, because I don't know if Zorko's a man of method and he knows, all right, to pull in that 45 into the corridor, I know the person's going to be there, so it's almost like a closed skill. Yep. But him kicking inside 50 was dreadful in the game, and it cost us
he wasn't alone.
he wasn't alone, but when you're the best kick in the team, it's one of the ones where, like, you know, your full forward misses from the goal square. It kind of sends shudders down your entire team, particularly if you're trying to go, well, I'm trying to break this amount of kind of time and efforts being put into me. It didn't quite happen, which is a shame. It is a shame because, I thought our first quarter was really good. We, went bang bang. The second quarter was a good. They were a bit. They got goals early on in the second, third, and fourth, obviously, but we did a pretty good job. And what more can you do?
I know. It's like I said, everything says we should have won that game. We did just about everything right, except for, kick the fucking ball through the two big sticks, which is the ultimate aim of the game, and to do that more times than the other guys do. And at the end of the day, 5 goals zip to 0 goals 8 in the last quarter, or the last third and fourth quarter, we'll do that. And I remember at the start of the fourth quarter, it might have been, I can't remember who it was that said it. It might have been Mark Rasciuto said, look, we went in 17 goals up. Mark Rasciuto, 17 points up. Mark Rasciuto goes, can Adelaide kick 3 more goals in Brisbane? It's going to be hard, especially in these conditions. And I thought, you know what? He's probably right, considering at that stage Adelaide had only kicked maybe 5 goals or something, maybe 6. And you're like, yeah, okay, that bodes well for us. We've got a 17-point lead. It's going to be hard in these conditions. And we just could not buy a goal. Dev Rob had 2 opportunities. One obviously was going to be a little bit difficult. The other one I thought was probably a little bit more gettable. I thought Neil had probably the best opportunity in the last quarter to kick a goal. Obviously that Archie one went the way of the score review, and I can't really argue with that.
We talked off air and we're happy with that.
I mean, what can you do? Like, the goal umpire, if you watch that replay, the goal umpire is in perfect position. He's standing on the other side of the post, maybe 3 meters back. He's looking straight up. There's nothing you can tell from the goal review that's going to overturn that. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, it should have been a goal. And a lot of people have sort of been arcing up about the umpires and the free kicks and all that sort of stuff. There's probably only 3 that I didn't love. In the first quarter, there was 2. So the first quarter probably should have been a 50, and even Jared Waitley said just pay the 50 in that case when the ball was knocked out of the Adelaide players' hands. The second was like a disputed mark between, I think it was Logan Morris and Dunkley. I can't remember if it was particularly those 2, but it's
Adelaide had one in the last quarter that was much the same, and theirs got paid.
And the last one was the high kick to the high free to Dawson in the last quarter as well, which clearly wasn't a high free kick. Those are the only 3 I have like a bit of an issue with, but it's a hard game to umpire.
They didn't dictate the outcome of the game. I personally think that the tunnel ball was a throw, because I don't think that you can do that. And I haven't really, because I rewatched from when their last goal went through. Who kicked their last goal?
Was that Dawson again? With the huge pack mark?
Yeah.
So there was the Rochelle goal that I spoke about. There was Dawson with that huge contested pack mark in the forward 50, which was...
It was the Keys tunnel ball one. So that was the last goal.
Well, that was 2, and this was pointed out on the AFL website. 2 of Keys' goals was just absolutely loose checking at stoppages, where the first one he kicked, Harris Andrews was looking around going, is anyone going to get him, Ben Keys? Okay, I guess I'll start going towards him. By that stage, it was too late.
It was Levi's man, and he just went into the mix and just left him, which is pretty weird. There was a Tex Walker goal where he took a mark over little Levi, and Charlie Cameron came as like a third man in, and not the greatest decision by Charlie to not identify that. He just goes in and tries to put body on. It's like, it's Tex Walker. All you have to do is wait, stand 2 meters off him, and jump. Just jump and put your fist through the ball, because Tex Walker's not going to jump. So to me, that was insane. But yeah, even the Rochelle one, I haven't gone back and looked at it, but it looked like there was a scoop from someone So kind of, I don't know. It doesn't matter.
We got away with one as well. Moddy obviously got pinged for holding the ball and didn't. It was a cold play on. We got a goal out of it. So, look, a lot of people are carrying on about the umpires, but there was only a couple of decisions and there's a couple of decisions every match. So there's no point sitting there going it was their fault when at the end of the day, kick the bloody goals,
I did not like Lohmann's staging.
No.
Didn't like it. I get that.
Tell you what, I hated his haircut too.
Yeah, I don't. It kind of. No comment.
But yeah, that's just me being an old fuddy-duddy. I wasn't overly keen on Zach Bailey's high free kick in the last quarter as well.
He got absolutely smashed with the guy's forearm in there. I have a lot of sympathy for that. It's completely different to Peatlings. Peatlings?
Yeah.
They're old mate. Who's now become a bit of a pantomime. But yeah, to me, there's actually not a lot wrong with the Zach Bailey one because it was I don't think
he just put heaps of mayo on it.
He's not, but yeah, I don't think he's looking for it. And I think it's probably a reaction you would have if you'd been bonked on the head, to be honest. O'Brien and the McCluggage one was quite funny, where it's like literally didn't duck at all.
Yeah, I know.
So, I mean, the Peatling, it's different if you're doing the arm thing. I don't like the arm thing. But yeah. So should we get into the last 8 minutes and 50 seconds?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm sure everyone is super keen to relive those last 8 minutes and 50 seconds.
No, well, so I went through and I looked at kicks that resulted in turnovers going inside 50, which I included the behinds and the out on the fulls. They're all wasted chances, but it's more the skill errors and the poor decisions. So I enabled to have one be both. So if someone made a poor decision and butchered it, that is both a skill error and a bad decision. So 13 turnovers.
Yeah, not ideal, is it?
Yeah, 4 rushed, 2 behinds, 2 out on the full. 13 skill errors. So just about all of them were skill errors to some degree, or they were skill errors that caused breakdowns, and then 9 poor decisions. And the decisions are not necessarily like, I would put Dev Rob's bad decision just in kicking the ball not high enough to beat the man on the mark. Lohmann's chance was great. Him running in on 50, like that's not a bad decision. That's a skill error. Didn't quite make the distance and things like that. Zorko was culpable. Levi made a bad one. Wilmot, Bailey had a absolute nightmare, and then Will Ashcroft, which is probably the most uncharacteristic one because he had 2 runners inside, and that's sort of the point that I'm getting at is that I don't think Adelaide's pressure on the ball was that good. I think we had numbers, we had momentum, we had the ability to actually just run through, but we just kept putting it into pockets, and they were able to deal with it. They were good in the contest. They were good in the marking contest. Lots of rush behinds. They made the right decisions. It was probably weird that they didn't have another momentum swing in that last quarter. So I don't know. That's it's probably, I don't really care to go into it any more gratuitousness than that. But I think we should be winning that game. And it is very annoying that we didn't.
Yeah, you're right. It's very frustrating, isn't it? But I don't leave that game feeling super deflated. I was probably more like I said at the start of the game, I was probably more deflated about the win against Essendon than I am about this loss against Adelaide. Just simply because of the nature of how we played, and all in all, as you said, we played 3 pretty bloody good quarters of footy. Just could not kick a goal to save ourselves. And like I said, I thought Neil probably had the best opportunity of them. Dev Rob's second shot on goal probably should have been. He just needed to hoik it 2 meters higher. And I understand it's hard. That should and probably will be Dev Rob's last appearance for us. But I do have sympathy for him. It is hard when hasn't played any VFL in the last month, and he's had, well, actually, no, that's a lie. He played a full game of VFL last week. I'm trying to give him an out here. 3 by 5 to 10 minutes worth of footy And every player on that field wearing a Lions jumper on Friday night was feeling the pressure. And you could tell it because, as the commentator said, they're spooked. They're making really poor decisions. You just went through the list of poor decisions, skill execution. Just like the way we'd bomb it inside 50 and just put it in that awkward length of like not at the top of the square or like 15 metres out, but just enough so that Mark Keane or Worrell could get a hand on it and rush it through. And that just kept happening and kept happening. And everyone was just so panicked. Like everyone was just feeling the pressure and they just like horse blinkers on, just couldn't think properly and just panicked their way through it and kept bombing it in, thinking, eventually, and I get it, like eventually it's got to turn, right? Like if you keep getting inside 50s, eventually one of these will go through.
Yes and no, but the thing is it's like no forward took a contested mark and scored a goal. It was only Dawson that did that as like a fourth man up over the top of Thrillhouse. So
yeah,
the precedent hadn't been set. Let's put it that way.
But that's been our game mode. Like, with and without Joe is like get the ball inside 50. If we don't get a mark, it will fall to ground, and that's when you let Bailey. That's when you let Rayner, Charlie Cameron, et cetera, Loman all go to work, lock it in, have a shot on goal, lock it in, and it just it worked. We locked it in, and that's just due to the fact of the nature we kept kicking behind, so it was in that area of the ground, so it just kept coming out back in, coming out back in, and it just wasn't happening for us.
Yeah, there's a bit to be said about that. So, yeah, all in all, I mean, we should have won the way we played, but we didn't, and we should have played significantly smarter. So that's the weird mental gymnastics that this kind of result gives. Is you're like, well, we did enough to win. That's true.
Yep,
we didn't, but also we should have done significantly better. So winning should have been easier. I don't know. Make sense of that. Oxford Dictionary or whatever.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't affect our ladder position. We're still half a game clear in second across, over Adelaide and the Cats. But we do have two pretty tough games coming up, including the Giants at home and then Geelong at GMHBA for Paddy Dangerfield's 350th game, which is scaring me immensely. So we'll talk about that later. So I think we looked at these group of three games, Adelaide, Giants, Geelong, as, these are all going to be pretty big tests in their own right. It'd be good to go. It'd be great to go 3-0. I think 2-1 would be more than a pass. 1-2 is probably what we might be looking at now. And we're coming up against a Giants team that is, probably going to be hurting from a loss to Port Adelaide and have had a lot of time to think about how we ended their season last year as well. So they're not going to take it lightly. We'll have a chat about that later on the show. So, 1 and 2 would be as much as we can hope for at this stage.
I think given that we go from the Geelong game into the bye, it's just an element of we got to hit these games hard and not. I don't want this kind of we're in red zone Collingwood bullshit that we had to deal with earlier on the season. Hit the games hard, really make a good telling yourself, because I don't really buy into the sensationalism is always going to be there where, you lose to Adelaide at Adelaide Oval having played the Lions' share of the good football. And it's like, this game didn't tell us that our team's not good. If you want to find that, if that's your prerogative to try and find that kind of outlook, look in other games, because there's plenty of them where we haven't played very well. But the Adelaide game, objectively, we played pretty soundly. So I don't know. Anyone else you want to talk about?
Let's have a quick chat about Dev Rob and his role as the sub. Actually, no, we'll get to that in the questions, because there's a fair amount of questions and that will be covered. So let's jump into some votes for hoponbrewtours.com.au. Honourable mention to Hugh McCluggage, who's missed out on a vote from me this week. I thought he, obviously didn't have the sort of week he had last week, but I thought in a game where a lot of people were making silly decisions. He made some pretty good ones across the night. He did have a couple of turnovers, but he certainly wasn't alone there. Jasper Fletcher, my 3, Jared Berry, the 2, and Will Ashcroft, the 1 for me.
Yeah, cool. I had McCluggage 1, Fletcher 2, I think Fletcher 3, and I had Payne as 2.
Yeah,
just Payne was pretty good. He made like one mistake, which cost a goal, which is, I mean,
fine, whatever. Yeah, and it was that. And to be fair, that goal that Thilthorpe kicked was pretty tinny.
Extraordinarily.
Yeah, he just got worked under the ball and on the boundary. So, I thought Payne was really good. And in a night where not many people were taking any marks, contest or otherwise, I thought Payne probably sort of held his own there for sure. So, he's having a great season, Jack Payne. He's having a great season.
Yep. Yeah, he's doing fantastically well. So, happy he's there. Yeah.
And of course, Noah as well. Another huge game, and really good to see him recognised by Josh Gabelich at the AFL website as well. So,
speaking of the AFL website, did you see the article about Silvani and Wiedering?
No.
Well, they had one, and it just showed a bunch of pictures of them through the ages and whatever, and it had here's Silvani with his dad in the grand final parade in 1995. What's wrong with that?
He wasn't born in 95, I would have thought.
Correct. He was born in 1997. So do your job.
All right. Team changes. And we'll have a chat about the Magoos as well, which is not going to be fun because they were absolutely minced by Williamstown on Saturday as well, and not many high points to talk about there.
It's a hard thing to do when you're depleted because we've got injuries in the first team and you've got people covering that, and then you play one of the bona fide VFL teams who that's their lot in life. It's like, sorry, if that happened to Southport or if, it was happening where it'd be the same story. So, sorry guys, but just happens sometimes. So.
Good to see Dan Annable actually get a game in the VFL and played pretty bloody well. So, good for him. Couple of tackles, 5 clearances, 18 touches. First game against genuine men. So that's a positive. The big negative is Tom Doedee was managed for this one as well, so he just cannot get up. And then Kadeen Coleman as well with a 5-week quad injury that he was sustained at training over the last weekend. I have been informed that it's not a quad and that this knee swelling is really starting to cause a bit of an issue.
Thank you. Your intel.
And that I got that intel from the same person that told me that before it happened, Daniel Rich and Jack Gunston were going to take some time off. So I'm inclined to believe this person. So yeah, it's not ideal, is it? That Kitty simply just cannot get a run over. But yeah, Tom Doedee.
Well, between Kitty, Doedee, and Gardner all having knee soreness, so we've had a good record with the previous class of ACL. Haven't quite had so with this group, given we've had a repeat and then 3 that have been. I mean, Gardner's been pretty solid, but it's shit.
Although, yeah, did you see Link is making some pretty good progress with his recoveries weeks ahead, and potentially could be in the frame before the end of the home and away season for selection, but that still seems like such a pipe dream at this moment and not really worth sort of thinking about. But
as far as I'm like, that might as well be magic as far as I'm concerned. So seeing is believing, and and seeing Jamie Elliott carve for Collingwood kind of is like, that's the evil version of Link McCarthy. So.
Team changes, are you making any? Mine's fairly easy. I would assume yours would be
change the
similar.
sub.
Yep.
I put either Rev or Dev. Rev or Irish in.
Yeah.
So that's
about right, yeah.
Can I get ahead of what I'm assuming are the questions about? Why is Dev the sub? Because, yes, they are valid questions. But I think if you're going to be a sub, you need to be, like, let's say you're someone that's in and out of the team. McKenna's played enough AFL football to know what the standard is for AFL football. So much so that him not being in the team probably is okay. It's less unnatural. Whereas I don't know that Dev, he's played football for sure, but he hasn't played like a super gigantic block of football to warrant a second nature understanding of what the pace of the game is. I would hazard he's played more twos than ones. I don't think McKenna's played more twos than ones across his career. And if you're going to have someone that's coming in as an impact like Rev, they need to be playing in the VFL every week as well, so that they're up to date. So I don't know. Yep, that waffle is what I'm going to say.
It's just a tough one because, as we've spoken about, Dev had 2 golden opportunities. You know, when he had that kick on the sideline, I'm sure, like me, everyone thought, all right, well, this is your moment, mate. Like, you've been out of the team for over a year. You've been the sub. This is what, you know, the sub is made for these moments where you can come on and impact. You got fresh legs, shot on goal, butchered it, and then later on, running shot on goal, butchered it, and you just think to yourself, oh, man, it could be it for you, man. That could be it.
Yeah, I don't think that he's... I think he's kind of redundant, and that's why he's not been in the team. And I know that sounds horrible because I'm talking about a person. So I don't mean it in that sort of a way, but I mean his footballing, what he brings to the team is redundant largely because other people are doing it better. And it's not really a point of difference because he's never been the quickest. But, you know, we had a similar situation in the Melbourne game where McKenna came on and he kicked one from the boundary.
Yeah.
So that's your 2 sides of the same coin, or 2 coins of the different side, or whatever the hell you want to say. So do you want to ask me some questions?
All right, let's get to some questions thanks to Crisp Communications. ChrisComms.co giving you a free Brisbane Lions Fancast stickers. You can get those through our website. You can also get your Brisbane Lions Fancast merch as well. T-shirts available. Lovely. All right, let's go to Chris from South Morang.
Boys, do you think it's time for the frog to be dropped? I think he's been a bit average lately, and he looks like he's a bit like 1 metre behind the player, you know, like he can't keep up anymore. What are your thoughts on that?
I hate to say it because you know I love Ryan Lester. His last couple of games haven't been the greatest. Hasn't been awful, but haven't been the greatest either. Do we drop him? Probably not, because the person that comes in for him is Tom Duday, and he cannot get a run of it in the twos. So, no, Froggy's in the team.
I think that, and I think Zorko's been off the pace. Obviously, I've been loud about that. But I think our injuries have not allowed us to rotate in the way that I want them to rotate. And I'm not saying that what I want is the thing that they should always do, but I think that it would have been, in a perfect world with Gardner and Duday and Coleman, being able to run them through would be better longer term for Leicester and for Zorko, because we've seen what it's done to bloody Sidebottom and stuff like that. Guy is evergreen at the moment. So I don't think that he's in drop territory, but I also think that we haven't been able to nurture his position in the team, and he is suffering because of it. So it's also worth remembering as well, our season's been a little bit not the way that it would have been planned, because you can imagine that the sports magicians and sports scientists and high performance team would look at the fixture, go, all right, we're going to go da-da-da-da-da, and they'd plan the whole of the preseason with the idea of having a bye in round 3. And we didn't get that. So I don't think that it would have been an expectation, or it certainly wouldn't have been planned that these guys would be playing 16 games straight. Or 14 games? How many games have we got? 14?
So that's round... What's that, round 13? I think it was just... Yeah, this is round 13.
So we'd be playing 15 games in a row. which I think is a lot to ask on anyone, let alone two of the more senior of players. So,
the buy can't come quick enough for us, I think, at the moment.
It can't, but we can't be waiting for it to happen. We have to be be gritting our teeth and going down to freezing Geelong. It is so cold here. It is so cold. And we need to do the job because it's the last thing. Well, there's two, the tick off the shit we haven't done as a team.
Yep.
They claim they've ticked them off because, they've beaten Geelong in Victoria. We've got to beat Geelong in Geelong, and we've got to beat Collingwood at the MCG. They're the two.
Yeah.
So, and we've still got them to do, and I want those ticked off.
Is there a chance Geelong aren't going to be fired up for their captain's 350th game against the reigning premier, against a team that bowled them out in the prelim last year, against a team that came from behind to beat them earlier this year? Is there a chance they won't get up for that game? Because I think they might get up for that game.
If we could find out where they eat their pre-game dinner, maybe I could slip some laxatives into their soup or something like that. We could try that. So anyone with any intel, if Brooksy's got the intel on the injury front, I'm willing to do the saboteuring on this side. So obviously that won't happen. But yes, it is pretty bloody fair to say that they will be up for that.
That game scares the shit out of me. All right.
Just embrace it. Embrace it, Don't be scared. Just enjoy the game, be frustrated, and then turn the page, I said compartmentalise. I understand footy is more than a game, as the Footy Show told us for many, many years. But, it's okay. It's okay.
Let's go to Nathan.
Hey, boys. Long time, first time here. I just wanted your opinion on the over-the-top gloating from the media on how good Adelaide were Friday night, even calling it Matthew Nix's best performance for Adelaide, even better than their thumping of Sydney the week before, calling it one of the best defensive performances you'll see, where, in my opinion, they let 10 shots on goal in the last quarter, and if we convert one of them, well, the narrative completely changes. To me, bar a purple patch at the start of the fourth quarter, we were clearly the better team. We won contested ball, we won clearances, we won inside 50. It was just our inability to score, which cost us. I wonder if it's just a case of Adelaide have arrived as a headline, sells more papers, and Brisbane Lions are still in the mix. I was wondering what your thoughts are.
So you shaking your head a lot through there. I think
shaking my head in agreement, shaking my head. So I feel like you can field this one for me.
Yeah, I think for the reasons I mentioned before, that recently, especially in the last 3 or 4 years, those are the games that Adelaide lose, and their main criticism is they're a good team, they just can't do it against the best teams. So for them to actually walk away from that game with the win, I can understand why they would be happy about that up and about. Was it Nixie's best coaching performance? No, obviously not. Especially when I'm sure Murray Davis did a lot of the heavy lifting in that. But if you're an Adelaide supporter, of course you're happy with that. But you're also looking at it going, yeah, we got away with one there too. Or maybe you're not. Maybe you're just enjoying the win, and fair enough, you're an Adelaide supporter. Who cares? You've got the 4 points. I can understand why people are saying, yeah, that's a big win for Adelaide in the context of not just this season, but, seasons gone by. But yeah, he's right. As we said, there's every reason we should have won that match.
I covered this early on where I said, if I was an Adelaide fan, I would be worried that this win would be blueprinted as a false economy, because I think that they lose that game against... I think they lose that game if it's in the dry, and I think they lose that game if there's a fucking Hogan up front, or who's another key forward? Can't think of any of them.
Josh Tracy,
even a Maya check, a big contested mark. If they're playing, they don't win that game. They probably don't even win the game if we played it again. So. I would be worried that I'm hoping that they rest on their laurels and go, yep, Beauty. That is a defensive performance of the ages because it was not. Speaking my language, man.
Captain Thunderstruck on our Twitter, how well do you think we will fare following the bye? In previous years, we've actually played pretty good footy shortly after the bye, composure and cohesion usually improving by comparison to early season form. The only change is that the bye this year is sort of like 2 to 4 weeks later than usual. Gotta say, obviously last year we won 9 straight coming off the bye, and we actually have fared fairly well off the bye. But our back half of the season, we've got a pretty hard fixture for the back half of the season. Like, we've already played Richmond, we've already played North, we've already played West Coast. I think we've got another game against Sydney later on in the year, if I remember correctly. Other than that, we haven't got too many sort of, like, we've got Collingwood at the MCG. We've got another game against the Suns at People's First. We still haven't played. We've got another game against Geelong at their home ground as well. There's a fair amount of teams we still haven't played. So
Geelong's before the bye. Geelong's the game before the bye.
Yeah, we've got another game against the Hawks. So there's a few teams that we need to come up against. We haven't played Port yet, who are currently bottom 4 at this stage on a Sunday night. So our back half of the fixture is tough.
We were looking at it last year going, it was tough too. I still am a firm believer that our fixture last year was significantly harder than it is this year. We've got home games against good teams and we've got away games. Funny stat. So heading into the game against Adelaide, we'd lost once outside of Queensland in 12 months, I read.
Crazy.
12 months. And that game was the Collingwood Schultz, where he decided to become an entity rather than a person. Staggering stuff. What are you guys doing up there at the Gabba, dude? Sort it out. Be better fans. Maybe if we spend less time dancing and less time creating a cacophony of noise and sound and lights and fire and just focused on a good atmosphere at the football. If that is the thing, sorry, I'm going to go into a rant here. If COVID and the Brisbane Lions are the thing that has brought goal songs into the AFL forever, I just don't know how that sits with me. Bad is the answer.
Look, I do understand that is the thought of a few people, and especially neutral fans of, like, especially country roads, all that sort of stuff. It can be a bit cringy for people that don't get amongst it. I love it. And, at the Gabba, it is great. And it's sort of our thing. We've embraced it. I don't think it's helping or hindering, if I'm honest. I think it would help, if anything, to get that crowd involvement, because actually this year at the Gabba, the crowd has sort of been a little bit in terms of their, the Lions chant, and Brisbane, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
it hasn't
but that's because this has conditioned and taught fans not how to be football fans and how to engage in the traditional football manners. I'm strong on this. And I think that's one thing that I enjoyed so much about the Premiership last year is the last 3 games, the prelim, the qualifying, the prelim, and the grand final, all away games. So I don't think Joe Danaher against GWS hits quite as hard with the Frozen in the background.
I'm going to have to disagree with you, and you're going to have a lot of people disagree with you there.
I'm totally fine with that, but and I understand that they're trying to engage the crowd, but I think in trying to engage the crowd, they're actively kind of creating a detachment between. I was a kid that used to go to the Gabba when I was 7, and I did not want for entertainment at that time. I didn't need to be pulled back into the game. Up there, Daly played and We Love Football played at the beginning of the game. And I've said it before, they're the only 2 songs that need to be played, as well as the club songs at a football field. So I'm a bitter old man. I understand it. I just hate it. And I hate that it's what the Lions have done to the entire competition now. Next question.
All right. Okay, and apologies if I do not get to your questions. We had a lot of them come through. So here's one from Bill on Twitter. It's a pretty simple question. Are we having a good season? I think, yes, we are. Everything packed into one. Yes, we're second on the ladder. Compared to this time last year where we were sitting 13th and we'd just been belted by GWS on Anzac Day, yes, we are having a good season. I think we've been spoilt lately, and the fact that we're not winning every week by 10 goals isn't enough for some people, and that's because we're very lucky at this point in time that it is hard to forget. It's hard to remember, actually, that we were an absolute basket case 10 years ago. So, yes, we're having a good season.
I also think that the perfectionism of sport kind of has crept into the AFL a little bit and into just fandom in general. Sorry, I'm railing on the fans a lot, aren't I?
But I get it. It's like you look at the EPL and Manchester City won the title how many years in a row. You look at the NBA and it's like, Golden State Warriors, Kansas City Chiefs in the NFL. You look at international sport and it's like, well, that's go. It's like you got the money, you win the stuff. Even in the NRL, the Panthers won the last 4 premierships, and I know that's a bit of an outlier because it's not really under the same model as international sport. It's just sort of, I guess, expected as like, once you're good, well, you got to be good now. Whereas it's really
the expectation that you win every game regardless of any context. Whereas I think the AFL is significantly closer than most other sports. I understand that there's inequity and inequality in different ways, but I just think that it's probably harder to. I mean, has a team ever won every game? And the answer is probably not. Essendon nearly did it, but they got done by the flood. So
yeah, the Dogs flood. Yeah,
no, it does. It doesn't happen, and it doesn't have to happen. The Lions never finished top of the table any of the years they won a premiership. So they always knew how to play against the good teams, knew how to do well in those games. And I think this team is very much of that ilk where they're like, we'll do enough. And then you come up and you play Hawthorn and you go, well, we'll smack them. Or you play Adelaide and you smack them, don't get the result, but probably should have. So, yeah. 1.5 thumbs ups for the season.
Not bad. All right, Alexander, who actually went along to the VFL game, he's a Williamstown fan, so that is the caveat that he wants to put on this. He says there were literally none of the AFL listed Lions that warranted elevation, then they were pretty dreadful. So he went along and watched this one half-ass comeback in the third, but they were never really near it. No one knocking on the door. Reville was soundly beaten by VFL tier mids. McKenna had one good tackle, but did not much else. Zakostelski, if Big O and Darcy Fort go down, the Lions are stuffed because they were tailed up by Downey, who got us last year as well in the VFL. And he says, if you had to drop anyone from the AFL team, who on earth are they going to be replaced with? And that is a good question. I guess the two most obvious candidates to come into the AFL team in the next couple of weeks, we spoke about it before, like the Ryan Lester for Tom Doedee is there, but also not there at the moment.
Gardner.
And Starcevic is due to be back for that Geelong game, but you're not dropping Noah Answorth for him, that's for sure.
No. That'll create some headaches, but I think they're pretty malleable. So we'll get to that. I'm not doing teams in for Geelong now.
No.
It's too difficult. Marshall's probably the other one that could play.
Yeah. Sub at best at this stage.
I don't see the value of him as a sub, because I went on a tirade before. McKenna to me worked last year. It should still work because he's someone that understands the game and understands what's needed. So he seems like he'd be easy to coach. Run around, man. Run around and you get a pint of Guinness at the end.
Then you can go back to your horses. Adam, I think we need Day back as part of our structure. Eric is back in his shell a little bit, burnt out from the rucking, it seems. We really suffered from dump kicks and there's no one there to mark them or make the contest work. And yeah, we've spoken about Eric and the effect that the backup ruck has had on him. I thought he was a little bit better on Friday night without having to do that. And I thought Ty Gallop actually... I thought it was good because he was young and to throw him into the backup ruck to get him into the game. And as I said, I thought his ruck rough was actually pretty good. And you going in against a genuine behemoth of a man, and he held his own.
I thought Gallop was great. I can't fault him. And the thing is, you got to remember as well, he came off and Dev came on, which put us one tall shorter for that kind of dump kick. So it just lowers the amount of bodies. I'll tell you what, Logan Morris's field kicking is bloody beautiful.
Isn't it? Yeah. I thought quickly just talking on rucks because Ross had sent through a question. We sort of talked about Ty Gallop. I thought Darcy Fort was soundly beaten by Riley O'Brien across the night as well. I thought O'Brien had a really good night for them.
Yeah, I guess so. I thought Fort did some good things, but yeah.
Right, and our last question, and once again, apologies if I didn't get around to yours. I'm trying to cover all of it without wading through all of the stuff. We do have one from Andrew. Is it time to drop Charlie? Will McLaughlin is in some serious form in the VFL, and he did kick another, I think, maybe 3 goals over the weekend. Will McLaughlin, could be wrong. What are your thoughts on that? Giving McLaughlin a good shot at some AFL footy.
I don't know. It feels like a trap question.
Charlie or Kai, who have both... Kai's working into it since his injury, since getting absolutely crunched by Stocker. He just still doesn't seem to have the confidence in his body to fly at marks or absorbing any sort of physicality. So Kai and Charlie have been on and off the boil. Will McLaughlin seems to be playing fairly sustainable, good footy in the twos.
Yeah, but how does that go against like a specialist lockdown or, a good system? You got to imagine that there's going to be like exponential improvement when you go into AFL. And I know he kicked a couple goals on his debut, but I don't know. I'm not sold on that.
Yep.
I think you tend to know what you're going to get. And I don't think that it was Charlie Cameron or Kai Lohmann's fault that we didn't win the game. Although they did also contribute to the cluster of crap.
All right, let's have a quick look at tipping. It's going to be hard because the round's obviously not over. There's a game currently underway and another one tomorrow for King's birthday. So far, I'm sitting on 3, and yes, that is largely because I tipped Adelaide. I got the Cats and I got North over West Coast. Lost out on the Giants. I did back the Tigers to beat Sydney. I thought the Dogs would get the job done against the Hawks as well. I have tipped Carlton at this stage. They're in front by 28 points. And I've tipped Collingwood for tomorrow. So best I can get is 5.
Best I can get is probably 3. I've had a bad one. Because I tipped Sydney. But yeah, I tipped Essendon. And I tipped West Coast because I also figured out that it was at like Hands Town Stadium, and they did us.
They did.
So I've got done by shit goal kicking in 2 games.
That was such a bad game of footy all round by 2 teams. Hey?
And also, like I didn't quite understand why Carlton were such heavy favourites going in against the Dons, but must have missed something because Carlton have been shite.
All right, let's have a quick look at next week then. Thursday night, Dogs, St Kilda at Marvel. I'm locking in the Dogs there by 22 points.
Dogs by 80 points? No, Dogs by 31. These big leads are not working for me.
Adelaide and Hawthorn at UTAS.
Hawthorn?
A tough one. Obviously, Hawthorn was great on the weekend.
Speaking of Hawthorn, so, Ginnivan showed the ball, right?
Mm-hmm.
Showed the ball.
He did.
Lee Montagna had the call to say, oh, yeah, no, I don't think there's room for that in the game.
Yeah, mate.
The guy that literally stalled on the line against the bottom team.
Yep.
Sucked in, you never won a flag. And people who played against you in that game won a premiership. So, little meatball, Monte meatball.
All right, I've gone the Lions to beat the Giants, Cats to beat the Dons, Freo to beat North, Port to beat Melbourne, but I could change that. That's at Adelaide Oval, and Carlton to beat West Coast. I'm stuck on Hawthorn Adelaide because yes, Hawthorn were great on Thursday night against the Dogs, but the 3 weeks before that they looked pretty bad. I think this is more of a credential game for Adelaide than beating us at home away at UTAS against the Hawks.
Well, they beat us at home before.
Mm.
So, yes. It was funny to see Hawthorn be a lot better without Sicily and the Walrus of Waverley, so that was good. Funny for them. Dilemmas. Do they bring them back? Who cares? I tipped Hawthorn.
You tipped Hawthorn. I've gone Adelaide, but I have a feeling I might change that at some point as well. Was everything else basically the same as what you've gone? So,
yep.
Lions, Cats, Freo, Port, and Carlton.
Although probably the potential would be if Melbourne go on a blaze tomorrow, and then maybe they get the one against Port Adelaide. Worth noting. So we had been just before we get to this wheel. I had been keeping track of my gauntlet. That obviously I went out because the Lions screwed up against Melbourne. Guess who I got done by later?
Who did you get done by later?
It was Gold Coast against Fremantle the other week. So the two Queensland teams would have done me. So thank you. I only supported AFL and Queensland my whole life, and you've stabbed me in the back like this. So thank you.
All right, well, let's get to the wheel. Let's give it a spin. I think it's your choice this week. Ooh, Marco Paparone. You're passing on Marco Paparone, I would imagine.
That's
correct. I'm stuck with Marco here. Brilliant. And you've got Jason Ackermanis. What a matchup this is. Triple Premiership, 300 game Jason Ackermanis versus the man that sounds like a pizza.
Yeah. So thankfully you have to go first. So.
I've got nothing to say about Marco Paparone other than the fact that I hated him for so long. How long was he on the list? 4 years? I think I hated him for 3 years. Hate's a strong word, but for 3 years I thought this bloke is useless. In a team of people that were all useless, I thought he was the most useless. And then by maybe his 4th year, I thought, you know what? He's actually starting to do all right here. He's playing off the halfback. He's taking a couple of intercept marks. He's using the ball all right. And then he gets delisted. So that's all I've got to say about Marco Paparone. And I don't know if he still owns that Scaly Mates t-shirt sort of apparel company. If he does, free shout out to them, Scaly Mates. I wish him well, but I never want to talk about him again. Jason Ackermanis.
You didn't like the two-pronged halfback thrust of Paparone and Sam Mays that we had in about 2016-17? That one didn't do it for you?
Let me think. No, I didn't.
Yeah, he wore number 22, so he was mentioned in the lead up to this game. Because Ty Gallop obviously wearing number 22, so there was here are the players that have worn number 22. Good to see my favourite line of all time present the Guernsey as well, so to Ty Gallop. You know who I'm talking about, right?
No, I missed it actually. Who
Jared Lyons presented the Guernsey.
Oh, brilliant.
So it's good to see him back. I say through gritted teeth, but no, hindsight is a wonderful thing. There's not really much you need to say about Ackermanis. I think he is the most talented player ever to play off of 2 feet in an attacking sense. Because if anyone wants to talk about Steelside Bottom or Sam Mitchell, I would love to see them slot a drop punt from 60 on the run on their left. Show me that footage and I will renounce this. Big game player. It's Jason Ackermanis. He's insane.
He's an absolute maniac.
Yep. He has a compilation on YouTube that I would have watched 500 times. And I think it's funny because when Mitch Robinson started kind of going off the boil, people were kind of making assuasions that it was quite similar to Ackermanis. And I remember making a statement that I think Ackermanis he genuinely wants to help, but it comes from this really weird, misguided insanity. But it comes from a good place. I think that he is a legend, and I win, so I'm happy with that.
I mean, obviously, this was a no contest as soon as Marco Paparone's name got spun up.
You never know. I could have gotten, I don't know, Brad Close or something.
Sure. You could have, if it was a Geelong podcast, I suppose.
Oh, Brad Close is the other, Michael Close, sorry.
I don't think he made the 50 games in the end. All right, yeah, that's a win to you. We'll chuck it up on socials as we do. Just search for BL Fancast.
Can you put up the picture? Can you put the picture up of Ackermanis doing a handstand after he's sold a house with the hat on?
Sure, you can do that.
You don't have to do that.
Two things I do want to quickly mention before we have a quick chat about the Giants next week. One is that apparently we are interested in Sam Draper from Essendon. Thoughts on that?
Not for me.
No, it tells me two things: that maybe Oscar Allen may have cooled, and that might not be as concrete as, say, Tom Morris thinks it is. I don't mind it as a backup. The only reason I don't mind it is because Oscar's 31 and Darcy Fort's 32.
Yeah, so someone did put this up on the Reddit, and I was not very... I mean, they were putting it up as a comparison to Danaher, and I had problems with that because I'm like, well, Danaher, first and foremost, is a forward. Yep. Draper's not a forward. Danaher is also an All-Australian. Draper is... The only things I remember about Draper is him diving on the ball, his stupid set shot routine, a bit his goal of the year, but even then... He probably had someone he could have given the ball to in a better position. And he talks garbage on podcasts. Now, I understand the irony in me saying that. But they're the only things that you like, that a person that I would say I'm pretty in touch with football, that I know about him. Not a great start. I think he is the wrong personality type, where I think Joe... I was skeptical about Joe before he came to, but... Hearing Joe talk is different to hearing Sam Draper talk. And I think Sam Draper would be, if you're getting him as a ruckman, I'm more okay with that. But I also don't think that our midfield group needs a ruckman. Of the wages I think he will dictate, I think he would.
I don't think he's going to demand that much.
He's got the biggest head in the world in terms of ego.
700 tops for Sam Draper. He's not $1 million player.
No, definitely not. He's definitely not $1 million player.
700 tops across. Was he 26? Offer him a 4-year deal at 700.
Yeah, could do. But yeah, if you're bringing him in as a replacement to Oscar Allen, I'm not okay with that because I want to stay as far away from a Sean Darcy and the Minotaur. Fremantle situation.
Oh, yeah.
Not Sean Darcy. Luke Darcy. Sean Darcy?
Yeah, Sean Darcy, Luke Jackson, yep.
Sean Darcy, Luke Jackson. Luke Darcy was the dad of Sam Darcy. There's too many... Oh, God.
And second question I want to ask you that has sort of been floated in a not real sort of way, but some sort of quasi-succession plan with Chris Fagan and Danny Daly to take over once he does chuff off at the end of his contract at 2027.
I'd be happier with a bulkier hero stepping in, but I would not also...
When you say a bulkier hero, are you talking like a John Longmire, Adam Simpson type?
No, I'm talking about the bulky hero.
Oh.
Stewie Jew.
Right.
I called that ages ago. I think I would love Stewie Jew to take over from the Lions and coach a premiership before Hardwick at the Gold Coast. I think that would be poetic justice. And I think that like the club basically can't do anything that I won't be spoon-fed because I think they've done things well. Worth noting, last week I did want to talk about Greg Swann because he hadn't been announced as going to the AFL.
Yep.
I thought that he would, and then the power went out and I forgot about it. So,
and he did, and that happened the next day after we recorded, and it's all been covered at this stage. But what he has done,
congratulations to him for sure.
Absolutely amazing. Yeah. So
it's going to be good for the. It's going to be good for the AFL. It's going to be good for the game, and I have seen a few people unsure as to like, should we get a football person in? It's like the dude's literally been involved in football for 20 plus years. Yeah. Like a long, long time. He was the CEO of Collingwood back when we were playing them in grand finals in the early 2000s. So he is a football person. And I know people here probably don't care, but like he'll be really good.
Yeah. And like one of the big issues is like, well, the AFL's not listening to the clubs. For someone that has been at two very, very like the biggest clubs in the country, and then an interstate club, and taken them from the bottom to the top, the man knows it all. So
when you were saying that, I was like, oh, Carlton are pretty big too, man. Come on. I was thinking he's been Brisbane and the Collingwood. Carlton aren't a small club.
Yeah, so I think that can only be good things, and I think no one has had a bad thing to say about that appointment. And I can't imagine any coming through. So that'll be fantastic. Obviously,
with the naming him, and also was it Mackie from Sydney as well? Tom Harley.
Yep.
I think it's an admission of guilt by the AFL that they've absolutely cooked this.
Yeah.
So good for us, I guess.
Good and bad. Obviously, it's a big loss, and the fellow. I meant
us as the football people. Not just like it's obviously not great for us, but it's okay.
All right, let's have a chat about this game against the Giants next week, 1:10 Saturday at the Gabba. At this stage, no update, but I don't know how much you saw of the Giants Port Adelaide game. Obviously, Cal Ward won't be playing. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure about Toby Green with that glute injury, which looked no bueno.
That didn't look fun.
No.
There was that one. There was a pretty big bump in that game too, and then the
Lekalia.
The Lekalia one, and the Tom Stewart one was brutal. I'm very glad he did not get suspended just on principle. Yeah. So I am glad that Peatling got suspended.
Yeah, I did think Lockie helped with that.
I've got something to say about this, obviously.
All right, let's go.
You're not a big soccer person, but when you get hit in the face with a ball, it hurts.
Oh,
when you really tense your neck muscles and go into it, doesn't hurt. And that's what I think. It's like if you're taking a punch in boxing, you want to tense toward the punch, and that's why Lockie's head tenses and goes towards the ground because he's trying to like brace for impact on the ground. I think that's what's happening. But it looks like he's digging his head into the turf, but it's actually protecting himself rather than getting hit in the temple. He's going front on with his head. And I think it's a suspendable action. And that's my theory.
I think it was a suspendable action. I think maybe he got an arm free. Doesn't matter. We'll wait to see if they.
He did get his left arm free and he put it down, but it was the opposite arm. So Peatling can
in the bin
chicken wing off.
No Briggs for the Giants. Callahan will probably still be a week away. I'm not sure about Stringer. He could be available potentially. So Briggs is the big out because he has done a number on us the last couple of times we've played. And I had no idea who that ruckman that was playing for them, that big fella with the ponytail.
Was it like Shane Mumford with a wig?
Could have been. Let's have a quick look here. Nick Madden. Never heard of him before. So
James Madden's long lost cousin flew in all the way from Cork to play for GWS. I don't know. They have a lot of outs, don't they?
They do. They've got some big injuries, and if that Toby Green injury is at least a week, then that's good news for us. But having said that, we've played the Giants where they've had a number of injuries before, and they absolutely did us. So no time to be sitting there going, yeah, licking our lips at the side of that.
Oh, I'm licking my lips at the side of that. I'm confident going into it.
One thing for sure is we're going to have our work cut out, especially when GWS have a set shot outside 50 because they seemingly never miss against us when it comes to that. And Noah Answorth, are you sending him straight to Darcy Jones? Or Brent Daniels if he's in the team? I think Brent Daniels was the sub. He was coming off an injury. It sort of
depends. If Toby Green's there, probably nods to Toby Green. But that said, having like a butt cork would be not good. So Darcy, they've got a lot of they've got that little Harvey Thomas guy. They got Darcy Jones as another one. They're like all clones of each other with varying degrees of helmets. So I don't really know whomst, but obviously Darcy Jones has gotten us in the past. I think it's more the collective that's going to have to pull their fingers out with this one.
Giants have been hot and cold this year, hey? I just cannot get a read on them. Like, they'll go down and beat Geelong at Geelong, but then they'll lose to Port Adelaide at home. And
how are they still in the 8?
And it's a tough game. Like, there's so many teams sitting on like 5-8 or 5-7 or 6-7, 7-6. There's just a lot of teams that are sort of sitting around that 60%-ish, like in terms of win rate.
Yeah, I think we'll win, but it's just an element of our matchups and our midfield. Like we should be doing this game. Like we should be winning convincingly as well. We need to bring a performance after the last couple. We need the points, I think. Whitfield's been being played sort of forward and back at different times. So as to whether that'll kind of affect what kind of Calamachi will do, or whether they might put Whitfield to Zorko or something like that to try and exploit the other way. But I mean, they've got pretty good players. Tom Green's good, Bedford's good.
Yeah, he'll go to Neil. You'd have to think, or McCluggage, Kelly.
It's gonna have to be. We're gonna have to be. It'll be a very good. Have you learned anything this week? Test to go up against their back line. Have to lower the eyes and go, right, where are we putting the ball? Now, does Gardner come back in for Gallop for you?
No, Gallop gets another go for me for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Providing he's okay. So
yeah, well, that's the only caveat, because he sort of went off with a bit of a head knock, I think. It sort of never really was revealed, but you'd sort of think that's why he went off. I did think regardless we were going to take off him or Logan Morris in that third quarter, or fourth quarter it ended up being. I thought it was going to be one of those two that were going to come off for Dev because it was obviously not the night for key forwards. So unless he's ruled out medically, I would give him another game for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, well that'll just about do us for another week here on the Brisbane Lions Fancast. It's been an interesting weekend, and I was pretty quiet during the game and immediately after the game because I wasn't really sure if I was super upset and frustrated or if I was actually okay with it. And I think I'm pretty okay with it. It's obviously upsetting that we didn't walk away with the result, but I'm pretty okay with basically everything other than that.
I think sometimes the nature of the way these things can happen can just be like utterly infuriating.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
It's okay. I find my relationship with football to be quite good these days. So get to have my group therapy session with you lot every week. So just have to kind of bottle it until I get to that point and then uncap and we're good.
Right, well, join us next week for group therapy. And until then, enjoy your week. Go Lions.